In this story, our protagonist was born as a noble villain destined to die very early, and to survive he decided to adopt the 5 final bosses of the game. The plan was to give love and affection to prevent the end of the world, but those children understood everything wrong. Actually, they understood it very wrong. They didn't become heroes but obsessive fanatics instead. Behind the protagonist's back, those children created a cult of bloodthirsty assassins. They eliminated kings and destroyed armies, all in the name of their daddy, who is our protagonist. The entire world now thinks that our protagonist was a supreme evil genius, but in fact he was terrified of that cult and didn't know anything. Guys, basically he became the king of the underworld by accident. The story takes place in the Eastern United Kingdom. Within 10 years something very terrible would happen. The whole world would be destroyed by the 5 great sins. They would wipe out all the inhabitants of Earth. And to prevent this destruction, our protagonist came up with a plan. He would become their boss or benefactor. Call it whatever you want. The guy would take care of those villains. That was the protagonist's only hope since the kid had reincarnated 10 years in the past of a game. The boy was used to playing this game at his workplace. It seems like I know this world, but why on earth can't I read these letters? The good news is that he was reborn in the body of a noble, and because of that he could eat delicious food. Besides food in my hand, I also have beautiful maids. Yeah, I'm shameless. Share a bit with us. The guy was so perverted that he ordered his maids to bathe him. How beautiful life is. I used to be a simple employee, and now I'm here being bathed by beauties. One of the maids said that his older brother was returning, and therefore he should go to sleep earlier. The guy didn't understand, and she asked if by any chance he was pretending not to know his brothers Leo and Antonio. He recognized those characters who were part of the Palladio family. And just by the guy's face it was already clear that he didn't have good memories. It seemed the realization had hit him. Which family had he been reborn into? It couldn't be that this was really the game's Psychodia. I'm screwed. He's the protagonist. He had played a lot of that game in the past few months, which is why he knew it well. Psychodia was a turn-based RPG game, and he used to play it secretly at work. And he wasn't just any player, guys. He was a _ who spent 12 hours a day playing. And at the end of the game, the 5 great sins would appear. Then the kingdom, the nobility, and the cities would begin to fall into ruin. And among the families that would be destroyed was the Palladio family, which was his own. And for the boy's misfortune, he ended up in the body of the weakest son, the youngest. This character possessed almost no mana, not to mention that he suffered bullying from his older brothers. In short, of all the places he could have been reborn, he landed in the worst one of all. After this shock of reality, he lay down on his bed, hoping to return to his routine as a company slave. All I want is to go back to my 6-day shift. Oh my God, please make me return to my world, where I'm enslaved by the company. For the guy to prefer working as an employee, this world must really be terrible. Wait, I've played this game and I had the luck to be reborn 10 years before the main event of the game. All he had to do, guys, was to eliminate the causes of the world's destruction. He knew the history of the 5 great sins, so he just had to act while there was still time. Since he had been reborn 10 years before the events of the game's story, those villains were still children. And so 2 months passed and our protagonist managed to rescue one of the children who would become a villain and ended up placing her in his orphanage. The knight Evan who served our protagonist appeared saying that he had rescued a girl named Utia. Only now would the protagonist's name appear, and he was called Alon of the Palladio family. The boy thanked the knight. The one-eyed man asked if that was supposed to be a compliment. And our protagonist didn't say that this girl would become one of the 5 deadly sins. Trying to give his knight a compliment, he made an evil face, scaring Evan. That was because the boy had a villain's passive trait. Without giving too many spoilers, you'll see how this will bring consequences for the boy. He says one thing and people understand something completely different because of his villainous expressions. He even puts his hand on his face, saying that his face looks too demonic, even when he doesn't mean to make those expressions. A bit embarrassed, the knight thanks him for the compliment, and Alon had chosen that knight only because he knew he was very loyal within the game. Wanting to know more, the knight asked why the boy had rescued that orphan named Utia. He had become curious because even though he was a powerful mercenary, that girl had still frightened him. When he found her inside a cell being tortured, the girl had enough power to free herself, but even so she remained imprisoned, motionless as if she had chosen to stay there. And he also asked why the young master wanted to save her since he would gain nothing from it. Our protagonist knew that this girl was dangerous and would become one of the 5 deadly sins. Before losing her entire family, she was part of a bloodthirsty clan that had made a pact with an entity. Because of that, she became the sin of wrath, and in the future of the game, she ended up killing hundreds of thousands of people. But since he arrived 10 years earlier in the game, he rescued the girl, intending to provide her with a peaceful life. Of course, he didn't tell this plan to the mercenary, and the only thing he said in a slightly mafia-like tone was that he had a plan for that girl. However, it's not the right time yet, said our hero, explaining why he hadn't gone to see the girl in person. Upon hearing those words, the mercenary became very afraid, and Noro still said that he should make sure the girl received support and lived a happy life. Moreover, he wrote a letter and asked the mercenary to deliver it to Utia. She had gone through horrible things such as human experiments and was also tortured. That's why he wrote her a kind and affectionate letter. And so the mercenary immediately went to the orphanage to deliver the letter. Well, I'm not sure if calming her down will be the right way to prevent her from becoming a villain. He remembered the Archbishop's words, which could even have a calming effect. When unlocking that Archbishop's skill, it was possible to make Utia, the villain of the game, become a little weaker. Sometimes it didn't work and she would eliminate your character very quickly because she was extremely powerful. Since she had a clan that made a contract with a bloodthirsty entity, she was very powerful. And in the game there's a part where if you can't calm her down, it triggers a sequence of very difficult battles. But since that would only happen 10 years later in the story, our protagonist imagined that perhaps it was not too late. The idea of sending that letter was to form a friendship with her, thus gaining the girl's trust. Since our protagonist's goal was to stay alive as long as possible, he would do everything to make that work. And we see that little Utia really received the letter. The mercenary who was near the girl was trembling with fear, saying that her mana was incredibly powerful. He felt an extremely sinister aura and kept saying that she was devoid of emotion. Hey mercenary, the one who sent this letter is Lord Alon, isn't he? Why didn't he call me to be by his side? Upon feeling that sinister energy, the mercenary was already scared out of his wits. After that, he just needed to stop by the bathroom and change his underwear. Then he told Utia that the master had said it was not yet time for them to meet in person. And remembering that our hero had said this in a rather calm way, the mercenary interpreted it as some kind of threat. So he kept saying that Master Alon was very busy, which was why he couldn't come to visit her. But she ended up reading his letter and drawing some hasty conclusions. She said that now she understood, and the mercenary, terrified, even touched his sword, thinking it was a threat from her. He had written in the letter that she should feel good and no longer be distressed. And she understood it as if it were an order he had given her, and even said she would follow everything he said. And that's when the great misunderstandings begin. Guys, meanwhile our protagonist was lying on his big bed saying that he just wanted to live a comfortable life. He kept looking at the moon and saying that it was very beautiful and even had a slightly bluish color. The next day in the library he ended up dropping all the books on his head. The mercenary appeared saying that he had managed to rescue the second child just as his young master had requested. Seriously, you managed that, on my head. Did you treat him kindly? At that moment the door in the back suddenly exploded. And the one who appeared there was Master Alon's older brother. That was Antonio Palladio, and he immediately started annoying his brother, elbowing his head. Hey boy, when your older brother talks you answer, got it? Wanting to avoid more trouble, our protagonist ended up kneeling. At that moment something passed by at high speed and hit the wall. What had passed was a dagger, and the one who threw it was the other older brother. That was Leo Palladio, the eldest brother among the three. And we see that they didn't like each other since they kept fighting to see who would be the head of the family. Our protagonist knew all that story well since he had played that game thousands of times. The two brothers kept fighting fiercely for the position of family head. One of them was the king of the underworld, who dealt with matters involving women. You know, I can't talk. Basically, he was the owner of a brothel, and the other dealt with illicit goods, which I'll call sweets. And our protagonist slipped away quietly since he didn't want to take part in that madness. The mercenary was fixing our protagonist's hair, since he had been hit on the head. He leaned back on the sofa and kept saying that he just wanted to live a noble's life, eating delicious food and enjoying time with women. I know you understood what he meant, and the mercenary kept wondering why the youngest son of the Palladio family was so interested in rescuing kidnapped children. That was very strange because the boy could barely take care of himself. Look at the way he's sitting on the sofa. Anyway, the young master was very peculiar and asked whether he wouldn't meet the children at the orphanage. But Alon was acting very indifferent. He said it was only to rescue the children and place them there, giving them a good life. That kingdom where they lived was called the United Kingdom and was composed of multiple nations. The illegal slave market was concentrated in the city of Kalian, where those children were being rescued. After those children were sold, they went through many abuses, and because of that, those 5 children ended up becoming the 5 deadly sins. Our protagonist would not let that happen, especially because those children would become very powerful and destroy the entire kingdom. But Alon was a bit too lazy to act effectively and kept saying that he wouldn't go meet those children, giving the excuse that it wasn't the right time to meet them. So he ended up writing another letter and told the mercenary to deliver it to Utia. He had asked the girl to take care of the other children who would arrive. And we see that another boy arrived at the orphanage, and he had many scars all over his body. At that moment Utia approached and asked if he was hurt. She asked that because of the scars spread across his body, and she wondered if it was General Black Bod who had done that to his family and clan. That's why you must be lucky, for Lua has chosen you. The girl told that newcomer that Lua, who was our protagonist, had chosen him to be one of his soldiers, and extending her hands and smiling, she said that now he could finally serve Lua faithfully. And if he did that, Lua would fulfill his precious revenge. The girl believed she was doing everything her young master had ordered and even wrote him another letter. In one of the letters that our protagonist had sent her, he said that he suffered bullying from his brothers. So you can already imagine the misunderstanding this would cause. The scene changes to the next morning. His mercenary appeared saying that a disaster had occurred and our hero was there trying to read his books. The news was about his second brother. What? What happened to my brother? The mercenary said he had died. And so a funeral took place. The second son of the Paletua family had kicked the bucket. The father of our protagonist was there with his lovers, all serious, and it seemed the women didn't even care about the old man's son who had died. Wait a minute, it's really strange that my brother died at this part of the game. As far as I remember, he was supposed to die many years later, when the deadly sins were already loose in the world. And when he looked at his older brother, he was smiling with satisfaction, for now there was no one strong in his way. Wait, who could have killed my brother? Could it have been my older brother? A year had already passed and the children were growing up at the orphanage. That underworld business of sweets and mafia ended up passing to the first brother, and he took control of everything, both the brothels and the sweets. Meanwhile, our protagonist was looking for the other children, and during that whole year he kept exchanging letters with Utia, and she kept sending him news about the other children. He asked Evan if the children were being well cared for, and the man said yes. At that moment he threw some papers on the table and said he was investigating who had killed his brother. The clues pointed to an evil cult and little did they know that it was the children from the orphanage. But our hero wanted to live a peaceful life without many worries. Meanwhile, we see that there was a battle taking place. The scene moved to the sweets distribution site and the bald man kept saying that the eldest son of the Paletua family was very generous. At that moment when they went outside, they noticed that all the other soldiers had lost their lives. Those who were still alive kept saying that their hands were moving on their own, and because of that they were stabbing themselves. The blonde girl was surprised because her bald friend was also caught by that spell, and they started attacking themselves. A hooded figure appeared in the background saying that the puppet show was very entertaining. The ones there were Utia and Deus, that boy covered in scars. They were eliminating the entire mafia organization of our protagonist's older brother. That was because that organization also had the intention of selling children, and they had already been through that. Utia gave a smile to Deus and said that now that they had eliminated that organization, Lua's path would be smoother, and the boys simply agreed. And in that way they disappeared from there after completing the mission. Near the moonlight. They said that everything being done was thanks to Lua's will, and finally they caused an explosion at that sweet's base. Everything they were doing was for the blue Lua, also known as Alon Palladia, our protagonist. And we see that they left a moon mark at the site. Meanwhile, our protagonist didn't know anything, guys. And so 2 years passed, and our protagonist kept answering Utia's letters. The mercenary was running through the palace looking for the young master. Finally, I found you, young master. What is it, Evan? Were you looking for me? He had good news. The 5th child had been sent to the orphanage. Thus, the 3 remaining sins had been rescued, and the boy was very happy. Come, Evan, let's have some afternoon tea. And the guy was already all happy, acting like a little dog, jumping to grab the sweets. These are real sweets, guys. Alon said that his mercenary had done an excellent job and could now rest for a while. The man asked the young master if the orphanage mission was over, and he said yes. Aren't you happy, young master? You seem kind of sad. But our protagonist said that he was happy. Yes, and he even showed with his hand that he had a smile, and you'd have to zoom in a lot to see that smile. Remember that he has the villain's passive, guys, so no matter what he says, it will always look like he's acting villainously. Then he stretched, and after lying down he thought that it had been much easier than he had imagined to gather those children. It took only 3 years. All those children had gone through immense torture, and because of that they had met a tragic end, becoming the deadly sins. And this chance to save them would be very good, so that they wouldn't have that bad ending. That's why he created an orphanage so they could live there happily and peacefully. He asked Evan how the orphanage was doing, and the mercenary said it was working perfectly. The children had initially seemed like broken dolls, but now they were acting very happily. And the man asked if our hero wouldn't go see the children, and he kept saying no while opening the letter. He didn't expect Utia to have done so well, since she was one of the worst deadly sins, if not the worst. And according to the letters, it seemed that Utia had become a very kind child. He kept reading the letters and realized that the children were indeed living very happily. He called them children, but they were already teenagers, guys. It's so good to see them growing up so well, said our hero. The mercenary whispered again in our protagonist's ear, asking if he wouldn't go see the children. What an annoying guy, he won't stop asking me that. I don't know, guys, I think he's kind of scared to see those kids. That's why he doesn't go visit them. And that's exactly it. He kept saying that the deadly sins in the game were terrifying. That's why he didn't really want to visit them. Well, Evan, maybe in about 5 years it'll be more appropriate for me to visit them. The truth was, guys, that our protagonist was kind of cowardly since he didn't have much mana, and no matter how much he practiced, he couldn't perform powerful spells. He even kept trying to play around with magic. And Evan asked if by any chance the boy had heard about the Blue Lua. The boy said he had never heard of it, and Evan said that lately there had been a criminal group using that name. Then it was explained to our protagonist that this Blue Lua group had been eliminating several criminal organizations, but lately, young master, they had also been killing nobles. That made Alon scared, and he even stopped using his training magic. Our protagonist was cowardly and now he really wouldn't leave his house. The scene shifted to later that night. At the orphanage, the children were holding a meeting to discuss the monthly activity report. ETI had become the leader of that organization called Blue Lua, and the girl with cat ears said that she had already taken care of the northern organization. That was the sin of pride, Xiao Rang. She even meowed like a cat and said that she had defeated all the slave traders. She jumped, doing a somersault, and said that she loved the outfit she had managed to steal from them. The sin of greed named Hinny said that all the bodies had also been dissolved. And finally, the boy on the stairs said that the Southern Criminal Organization had also been eliminated. That was because that organization had illegal laboratories that performed human experiments. Everyone had been pulverized until they were unrecognizable. That was the sin of obsession Raiden. The leader of the sect said that they had all done a great job thanks to the will of the Blue Lua. That organization existed only to fulfill the wishes of the Blue Lua, who was the person that had rescued them all. The girl made a slightly crazy face, saying that now they needed to wait for the new mission that Alon would send them. However, they had a problem. That boy Diaz kept saying that while he was carrying out the cleanup in the south, he had ended up acquiring some information. Then he explained to Utia that there was an organization planning to eliminate the young master of the Palladio family. She immediately began emitting a reddish aura and asked if that was serious. The other sins were terrified of her since she was extremely powerful. In the letter, it was written that after the Count's death, he was to be poisoned and disposed of quietly. Basically, the older brother of our protagonist was planning to kill his own father and then eliminate his younger brother, who was our hero. 2 years had passed, and the father of our protagonist died of so-called natural causes, in quotation marks, right? People said the official cause was a heart attack, but our protagonist knew that excessive use of sweets could bring bad consequences, if you know what I mean. The older brother of our hero was talking to his subordinates, saying that part of their organization had been attacked last night, and the man there said it was probably that sect called Blue Lua, the Count of the Palladio family. The guy was so wicked that nobody cried at his funeral. And while our protagonist was leaving, we saw that his older brother was watching, as he planned to eliminate Alon. Evan asked the young master what he planned to do now, and our protagonist was already suspecting that his brother would try to eliminate him. So he planned to travel to a city in the far south. And after handing a suitcase to Evan, he said for him to prepare his things because they were going to travel. And make sure to pack everything. We won't leave anything here. We're getting out and never coming back to the capital. Evan asked if he wanted to go to the city of Hond. In fact, he had planned to go to a small village in the south in the Palladio County, which belonged to his family. And as he was leaving, we saw the silhouette of someone watching through the window. It was his older brother, full of anger. After arriving at the small village, our protagonist ended up having a snack and even said that it was great to be a noble because he could buy the best ingredients. If I were in a world like this and were rich, I'd also want to live an easy life. I wouldn't want to know about war or destruction. 3 days had passed and he received terrible news. His older brother had died. My God, what's happening? Everyone around me is losing their lives. Besides, he died too early. He wasn't supposed to die at this point in the story. He even wondered who had stabbed his brother's heart, since that's what people had said happened. He asked a servant if by any chance he knew which organization had done it, but the man was terrified, and everyone he asked was trembling with fear. Why is everyone so scared of me? I don't understand this. Evan came to the young master, calling for him. Hey man, did you find anything out? Evan mentioned that Avalon, which was the mafia organization of his brothers, had been destroyed overnight, and even questioned if our hero had anything to do with it. Ah, I get it. Everyone thinks I killed my father and brother just to become the Count of the Palladio family. That's why they're afraid. 3 days earlier, he had left the capital to go to a small city in the south, and shortly after that his father had lost his life. The scene then returned to those exact days, and our protagonist was a little nervous because his knight had said bad things might happen in the capital. But Alon thought nothing bad could happen since he had already taken care of the deadly sins, and now they were no longer those tortured children. On the contrary, those children were living peacefully in the orphanage, so they couldn't become villains. Besides, that mansion in the small southern city was very well protected, so he couldn't be attacked by the organization pursuing his family. Well, I want to live a peaceful life, so the best way is to stay away from the capital and live alone. Evan questioned why our protagonist was running away, and he said he had a good reason. But Evan didn't believe him and kept saying it was just our hero's laziness. You're a lazy young master. Even today you still haven't gone to visit the children at the orphanage. And since this was a flashback, we saw that exact moment when his brother was looking at him through the window. He wanted to kill his younger brother, but since he was fleeing south, he thought it might not be the right time. And since his father and second brother had died, he would surely become the leader of the Palladio family. A servant appeared kneeling, and he considered the idea of canceling the order to kill his younger brother. Maybe it wasn't worth it, and he should focus on the organization attacking Avalon, which was his mafia business. And while gripping the handrail, he kept saying that his younger brother simply irritated him. And he didn't know why, but he didn't give up on the idea. And he ordered his assassin to follow that carriage. "Why, master? Do you wish to eliminate your younger brother? What? Are you questioning me?" The man became angry because assassins were not supposed to question their masters. And we see that the man there drew his sword. Furious Leo kept telling the boy to simply go there and eliminate his younger brother. But at that moment he ended up being stabbed in the chest. "Ah, how dare you betray me, you bastard." The boy said that he had always loved playing war games, but that was Raydan. He was a member of the Blue Lua organization, and he idolized our protagonist. They were extremely grateful because our hero had saved them. And the man also said, if anyone dares to harm the great Blue Lua, that person will be eliminated. And he ended up doing just that, eliminating Alon's older brother. The man had been acting as a spy for 2 years, waiting to see if our hero's older brother really intended to kill him. And now that he confirmed that he truly wanted to kill the Blue Lua, he would destroy the entire Avalon organization. And the man kept saying that it was a pity that his brother had betrayed our hero since, according to him, the protagonist had given that man a chance to live, but he had ended up betraying the family. In the minds of the members of that sect, our protagonist was a great strategist, though they had no idea that our hero was actually a soft-hearted fool. A few days had passed, and he woke up feeling happy. He was still there in that southern village. And while having breakfast, he kept saying that the weather in that place was very pleasant. Truly the life of a noble is magnificent. At that moment, Evan said that a letter had arrived. And when he picked it up to read, the man was terrified and even dropped a piece of food on the floor. It was at that moment that he discovered that his brother had died, and his peaceful paradise in the countryside had lasted only 3 days. Guys, and so we return to the present, when everyone there was terrified of him. Everyone imagined that he had ordered the elimination of his brother and also his parents. And young master, was it really you who ordered the elimination of the entire Avalon organization? He stood there, head down in the corner, hoping nothing bad would happen to him. Since that organization had been killing nobles and even members of his family, the man was terrified that he would also be killed. But Evan said that the only person who had benefited from all of this was Alon himself. Now that his entire family was gone, he was the only survivor and he could become the count of the Palatio family. Moreover, the criminal organizations of both his family and our protagonist had also ended, so he would no longer face any threats to his power. Evan also suspected that his young master was behind all of this and even changed his clothes there, joking around to try to cheer up our hero. There exists an organization capable of burying giants of the underworld in less than a day, just like what happened with the Avalon organization. Hey Evan, are you sure this organization won't come after me too? Ah, are you talking about the Blue Lua organization? The man said that maybe it wasn't the Blue Lua that had killed his brother. That was because that organization or sect used to leave a blue mark on the bodies of those they eliminated. But the Avalon organization had been destroyed by swords, and not by magic. That's why everyone there was saying that it hadn't been the Blue Lua organization that had done it. Even with those explanations, Alon didn't quite believe it and thought that the Blue Lua sect was after him, wanting to eliminate him. No, my boy, they idolize you. Quite the opposite. Utia asked if they had left any trace, and the green-haired girl said that they had left no trace at all. No one would ever know that they were the ones who had eliminated the protagonist's brother. With a sword full of energy, the girl said that she had also left no traces whatsoever. Even though she had killed many people, she hadn't left any magical residue that could reveal that it had been the Blue Lua who did it. At that moment, Deus arrived and said that he had eliminated 486 men from Avalon's forces. That other boy also appeared and said that he had acted according to the boss's orders. They had eliminated all the criminal organizations of the Palatio family in less than half a day. Smiling maliciously, Utia said that this was very good for the young master and that they were doing everything according to his will. That Avalon organization, which belonged to Alon's older brothers, had caused much destruction in poorer kingdoms. But the white-haired boy said that the cleanup was not yet completely finished. That was because he had found more nobles involved with Avalon. And those nobles belonged to the Duchy of Aya, and they had an extensive network in the underworld. Utia ended up reading that information and recognized that family. Well, everyone, you already know what must be done, right? We must all go there and eliminate the Alsa family. And the boy who had killed our protagonist's brother said that they should make sure everyone was eliminated quietly. Utia sighed and asked the other girl if the information guild was completely clean. Since the Blue Lua sect was drawing too much attention, they didn't want to act in a way that would make it clear that they were the ones behind it all. That's why Deus kept saying that he was acting like all the other guilds, eliminating only with swords. And smiling, Utia said that it was thanks to Master Alon's will, for he would not want to draw too much attention to himself. Deus found the orders that Utia was giving somewhat suspicious, asking if Master Alon really wanted that. Then the girl said that all of them were merely the swords of the young master and did everything he ordered. and she kept saying that the Blue Lua organization should act only under Alon's orders. And they did so because they owed their lives to him. That's why none of you must ever disappoint him. But Deus didn't understand why someone as powerful as Utia was afraid to expose her young master, and even questioned why she seemed so restless and anxious, afraid of displeasing him. But without questioning Utia too much, he agreed to carry out the mission to eliminate the clan of the village of Aya. And everything they were doing was for the Blue Lua. The scene returned to our hero, who had no idea about anything that was happening. After his father and brother died, he became the count of the Palatio family and complained that he was having too much work to do. His brother's death was supposed to happen 6 years later in the story. At that moment, several servants arrived carrying some books and documents. All he wanted was to live a peaceful life. But there it was. Our protagonist had to work. Since he had the villain's passive, everyone there was terrified of the facial expressions he was making. But in truth, he was just tired, guys, because he had been working a lot. Evan was grilling meat by the fireplace and called for the young master. He said that he had told the young master many times before, but it was incredible how much effort our protagonist was putting in to be able to use magic, even though he didn't have much mana. Normally it would take 4 to 5 years to reach the second level of magic, but he had done it in only 2 years. Our protagonist was only training in magic because he was afraid of the Blue Lua organization, and the ability he was developing was a high-level magical power. But no matter how much he trained, he couldn't use those spells effectively. At first, it was exciting for someone from our world to be able to use magic in a fantasy world, but since he didn't have much mana, he had to act carefully because he could die if he spent all of his body's energy. Since his mana core was very small, the magic dissipated and he became sad, saying that it never worked. It's the same in our world too. When a person is born with natural talent, they can become much better than someone who is merely hardworking. And when you have no mana at all, even if you try your hardest, you can't progress that much. But in Alon's case, it was even worse because he had no talent and no mana. At that moment, Evan said that he had received an invitation to a ball. He was surprised because it was a ball of several nobles, and that was the perfect chance for him to make connections, so he went all dressed up. When he got there, he complained that he was tired because the invitation had been delivered at the last minute. That ball was common in the southern region of the Kingdom of Asteria, and while adjusting his tie, the boy kept saying that it was the perfect opportunity to build some connections. However, as he approached people, they ran away in fear. He even said hi to a man, but the guy there was trembling all over. Yeah, I guess there's no way around it. Everyone's running away from me. Evan laughed, telling the young master not to be so upset. That was to be expected. And he knew it would be difficult. Everyone there thought he had eliminated his own family to become the head. That's why people were so afraid. Besides, the boy had the villain's passive, so he always looked like he had an evil face. The boy went to a table, grabbed a glass of wine, and started talking about some details of that drink to a girl. But because of his villain passive, she saw him as if he were a bloodthirsty villain talking about wines. But the guy was trying to seem polite, guys. But look at the face he was making. Because of that, the woman started trembling all over. Hey girl, wait, I'm just talking about wines. It feels like a waste of time to have spent the whole afternoon researching red wine. Hey boss, maybe that girl's just shy. And so he spent most of the ball unable to talk to anyone. Trying to leave, he said that studying about wine was useless. The Palladio name had become much more notorious than he thought, and thanks to the rumors he ended up scaring people away. He had become someone others wanted to avoid. He told Evan that he was going to get some fresh air, and a red-haired woman was watching him from afar. She wore very elegant clothing and seemed interested in Alon. So he went to the balcony outside. Where did I go wrong? At that moment, someone called out to him and said they would like to talk a little about an important matter. The man looked toward the door and couldn't understand where the person speaking to him was. Hey, it's me down here. She was Loria, the third daughter of the Altia Duchy. Ah, right. Sorry I hadn't seen you. The Altia family was one of the 3 main families in the entire kingdom of the game Psychodia. And since that family was very powerful, he already assumed it would be a problem. However, he didn't remember this girl even though he had played the game many times. In a rather determined way, she said she would be very direct. She asked him to lend her his strength, but when she looked at the guy, he was making that villainous expression, which made her a bit shy. Then the girl said that she was going to be assassinated soon, and that's why she wanted the help of Alon Palladio. If he didn't help, she would certainly lose her life. Then the girl explained that she was being protected by her father, but he was suffering from a serious illness. As soon as her father died, her brothers would certainly eliminate her. At that moment he remembered her family, but he wasn't sure who this girl was. She was probably a character with little importance to the game, yet she kept insisting that he save her. However, he had refused to save that girl. She called him again saying that she had something to offer in return, but he didn't accept. Even so, I already have too many problems to deal with. If I get into more trouble, I'll definitely be eliminated by that Lua clan. And as he was leaving, he noticed that the girl was very sad. She was terrified of being killed by her brothers. Then our protagonist took a deep breath and told her that good things would come. And when he went back inside the ball, we saw that a group was spying on our hero. They were the orphans who would later become the deadly sins, and they noticed that our protagonist had said that good things would happen to that girl. Her family was involved in the underworld, but that girl wasn't. She was innocent of those crimes. That's why Diaz, which was the name of that boy, said that he already knew who they should eliminate. They interpreted it as if our protagonist had given them the order to eliminate the girl's family, leaving only her alive. But from our protagonist's face we could already tell that he had no idea that this cult was completely devoted to him. At that moment that redhead who had been spying on our protagonist appeared. He had a lazy look on his face, but deep down he was pleased that someone had decided to talk to him. Yet when he saw who it was, he already knew it would be trouble. It was no surprise that this kind of character approached him with the intention of taking advantage of his family. That was Lady Zenonia, and our protagonist greeted her. She asked if he happened to already know her, and the boy said that she was quite famous in many ways. That was because her family was one of the 3 most powerful ones. In the Northern Kingdom was the Ulsa family, which was that girl's. In the Eastern Kingdom was the Palladio family, which was our protagonist's. And in the West was the Zenonia family, which belonged to that redhead. She was the eldest daughter of the Count and laughed, asking how he was so well informed. She said that while subtly belittling our protagonist, thinking that his family was nothing more than a family of mafiosos. The boy greeted her saying that besides being well informed, he also had good taste and added that she was very beautiful. She thanked him for the compliment and asked if he would like to speak privately with her. I'd like to talk with you, yes, but we need to go somewhere else because there are too many watchful eyes here. In a seductive way she said that she would go to a more exclusive place to talk with him, and even said that she eagerly awaited meeting him again. What? What do you mean? Aren't we going to talk now? She turned her back and left. Huh, what a strange girl. I thought we were going to talk. I know exactly what kind of talk you were hoping for, you rascal. The members of the Lewis sect wondered why that redhead had acted so strangely. But even so, they decided to keep observing our hero. And he knew he was being watched, guys. He just didn't know it was by his own worshippers. They wandered around the entire ballroom, thinking that their master, our hero, was giving them coded messages. Some time passed, and our hero decided to explore a Grand Canyon. Evan asked why the young master wanted to go to a place like that. Our protagonist wanted to obtain a special item since he needed to become stronger to protect himself from those people who were spying on him. The boy didn't understand anything, guys. He thought the blue lua was trying to eliminate him. That was the Labyrinth of Whispers. By solving the puzzles of the 8 rooms, he would receive a reward, and smiling, he said that he had memorized all the strategies to get through that puzzle. Thus, they arrived at the entrance of the labyrinth, which had extremely tall doors. Even though he had visited that labyrinth many times, it was still shocking to arrive at such a place. Hey master, do you know how to open these doors? He said yes and that he used to come there often. He ended up making a slip. Then he gave an excuse, saying that he was just joking and that he knew how to get in because he had researched it. In that place there were several demons, and if they couldn't solve all the puzzles, they would have to face those monsters. After picking up a quill pen, our hero began making some inscriptions on the stone. Evan watched our hero and commented on how he could act in such a cold and calculated way. The mercenary there wasn't understanding anything, guys. How did our hero know how to solve those puzzles? And with a proud laugh, our protagonist kept saying that he had solved everything. After the door opened, they wondered what awaited them ahead. I'm pretending to be tough, but actually I'm terrified. After entering the dungeon, they noticed that the place was completely filled with magical artifacts and treasures. There were many items, but our protagonist said that he would take only a black ring and leave. Seriously, master, you're only going to take that? Don't you want to take these gold bars? That ring was an item called Restriction, and he confirmed with Evan saying that they wouldn't take anything else, only the ring. And the man looked sad because he wanted to take that gold. After leaving that room, they realized that those gigantic statues were actually stone golems. Evan was already terrified, saying that he would have to fight against those monsters. But our protagonist, now that he had the ring, said that he would take care of those creatures. Evan knew that the young master wasn't that strong. He would be putting himself in danger. And when the stone golem charged at Alon, Evan began screaming, afraid his young master would die. I imposed the restriction. At that moment, the entire place ended up freezing in time. That was the fragment that inherited the great divine will. It was as if he had summoned a mythical being in that place. Only our protagonist could see it, but a choice window appeared, and along with it appeared a divinity, which I believe was the game's operating system. It's as if the voice is making me perceive this place as reality. That divinity told him to speak. Since he had that ring, which was a stolen item within the game, all his magic would be executed through hand signs and speech. This power was so absurd that it distorted the laws of the world. And after he made his request, the divinity granted permission since he was there making the sign with his little hands. Looking upward, he uttered other magical words. The divinity granted him that wish, and he remembered all the spell lines from when he used to play the game. The divinity asked what he wished to achieve with this, and he said that he desired the permanent. This part here is pure philosophy, guys. And I confess I wasn't understanding anything anymore. Not even the protagonist understood. He stood there with a confused look, wondering if it had worked. He remembered that this part of the game had been removed from the final version because it was basically a bug. However, it seemed they hadn't completely removed it, and those magical incantations ended up working. Now he had inherited the will. A light began to shine around his hand and the ring was activated. Returning to the present, the man there, Evan, was screaming desperately, afraid the young master would die. That was because several golems were charging at him. Our protagonist was completely confident, and at that moment he decided to use the ability he had just gained. He recited the magical words and summoned the original lightning orb. No matter how much he trained, he would never be able to reach that power on his own. The monsters were coming, bloodthirsty, and the boy had summoned that electric orb that was gathering power. The price for obtaining that absurd power was having to make the hand signs and recite magical words. And thus he ended up launching that electric spell. The shock was so great that it caused a massive explosion inside the dungeon. Not even our protagonist knew that the power would be so destructive. And next he invoked another orb, now a darker blue one. That was the linear diffraction. For that power to work, he needed to perform several hand symbols, and also recite magical words while casting the energy sphere. I don't know about you, but this looks like a total copy of Jujutsu, resembling Gojo's attacks. Evan was surprised and completely stunned. The stone golems were supposed to be immune to electric attacks, but that's not what happened. Our protagonist managed to electrify all the monsters, and the strike was so powerful that the creatures began exploding into dust. And within just a few seconds all the monsters were eliminated. Nothing was left, guys. Not a single one remained to tell the story. Hey young master, what you just did was insane. You were hiding that kind of power all this time. In my 15 years as a mercenary, I've never seen anything like it. Why didn't you tell me you were that strong? Hey master, was that spell level 2? Our hero said yes. He had that serious expression, but deep down he was terrified of the power he had just unleashed. It's explained to us that in the game Psychodia, which worked in turns, the spells were cast through hand symbols or phrases. He had tried to use the spell Lightning Chains, but he had done so using that ring, which enhanced and imposed restrictions. That's why the magic had become so powerful. He hadn't imagined it would cause such massive destruction because of the restriction that goddess had imposed. For all spells, he would need to invoke them using phrases and also hand seals. For those who didn't understand, guys, some specific spells required the use of those phrases and hand seals. But now our protagonist would have to use that in every spell, even the weakest ones. However, in return, he would become much more powerful. After leaving the dungeon, he kept thinking about the grand power he had acquired. When they came out, Evan was completely exhausted, saying that he hadn't expected the day to be as turbulent as it was. He even asked who the bastard was that had built such a dungeon. Thinking about it, the Labyrinth of Whispers had another title. Our protagonist kept thinking about it. That was because in the early days when the game was about to be released, players had given that place a nickname. He told Evan that he had heard that this dungeon was nicknamed Palon. At that moment he covered it up, saying to Evan that they needed to return to the east quickly. The boy kept talking about things from the game to the characters, and then realized he had said too much. While guiding his mercenary, he kept thinking that he couldn't mess up the hand symbols or else the magic would fail. He even found it strange because he had tried to use a very weak and simple spell from the game, but in reality, the magic turned out much more powerful. He even wondered if it was because of that specific item. Well, I must be really good at controlling mana to make such expressive changes in the game. Yeah, my boy, I don't think it's you who's good. I think it's the item that's broken. After returning to their horses, he thought he would wait for his mana to regenerate before trying to use magic again. And we saw that the green-haired girl had been spying on our protagonist the entire time. And after he left, she decided to go to the dungeon to investigate. Upon arriving there, she noticed those writings from the ancient empire. She even removed her hood. She could read them, and it was written, "To a friend who would be left behind by the coward Palon." After reading those words, she seemed to understand that this Palon wasn't just any character, not just any person, but a legendary master. She even laughed because our protagonist had just left the dungeon using that mage's powers. That Palon had fought countless demons and had saved the world thousands of years ago. In other words, guys, he wasn't just a shameless mage who created magic with embarrassing hand seals, like our protagonist was having to do. Because of that, Rian came to believe even more that our hero was a supreme man. Well, since Palon created these powerful spells and our master can use them, then surely he's as legendary as him. And that warrior was so legendary that even the Blood Queen had gone to visit him. And she even said that Utia had been right all along, for our hero truly was a supreme being. The magic he had used was so powerful that it wasn't even recorded in the ancient library. Therefore, it was likely that this man was far more legendary than everyone in the sect had imagined. She left the dungeon convinced that her master was truly someone magnificent. And completely in awe, she kept saying that the Red Moon had been right all along. The Red Moon was Utia, and she even felt embarrassed for having followed those orders so blindly all this time. At that moment she turned and asked if he had arrived. The one who was there was Dias, and she asked if he had managed to obtain the information. The man said no, that he had eliminated the spies who were following our protagonist. He had killed the man so quickly that he hadn't even been able to get the necessary information. Rian even said that it would be better if he didn't kill people so fast and tried to extract the information first. And right after that they left toward the orphanage. The scene shifted to the Zenonia County. While having tea, the redhead said that it wasn't just a rumor. That boy, he wasn't just a person without emotion. He also knew how to play the political game. The Zenonia County was very well known, but in that conversation they had, he had said that it wasn't her father who controlled everything, but rather her making her own father a puppet. And it was very strange that he had said that, and she asked her father if that boy was just bluffing. Her father remained silent while writing a letter, and after using a spell we saw that she was indeed controlling her father like a puppet. And after snapping her fingers, he went into a trance and began writing frantically. Laughing wickedly, she asked how that boy had discovered that she was doing this to her own father. She had also noticed that there were other spies watching the man besides the ones she had sent. At that moment someone appeared calling for her. The woman told the servant to quickly say what he had to report, and then he took her to a room and we saw that there was someone lifeless there. Since the magic seal on that body hadn't been activated, it meant that the servant hadn't revealed her secrets. She already believed that the one behind all this was Alon Palladio himself. We just met and he already grabbed me by the throat. Meanwhile, our hero didn't know a thing, guys. The ones behind all of this were that Blue Lua sect. The scene then moved to the Altia Duchy. That girl said that Alon really wasn't an ordinary person. That's why everyone called him the noble of the underworld. Even someone as powerful as her father had ended up succumbing to our hero. She knew she would be killed by her own brothers, which was why she asked him for help. Because of that, the girl never imagined that our hero would agree to help her, since she didn't have much to offer. Her brothers had taken away all her wealth and power. With that, they had left her with nothing. Poor thing, she had only survived so far by clinging to her father's mercy. When she arrived home, her maids gave her the news. The maids said that her brothers had taken their own lives, and she was immediately shocked by the news. It was very strange for her brothers to do something like that. So the girl already started thinking that someone must be behind all of this. At that moment, one of the servants screamed loudly. That was because the other brothers of the girl were also lifeless. Could this really be happening? The one behind all of this was the white-haired boy, and he said that the cleanup was complete and that he had done it for young Master Alon. And so he left without leaving any trace. That girl was the only survivor of her entire family and then remembered young Alon telling her that good things would come to her. She thought that he had only pretended that he wouldn't help her, but in the end he had helped her as quickly as possible. Was that what he meant? Then overnight she had become the sole heir of the duchy. And of course she was terrified. What kind of absurd demon did I make a contract with? Now I'm doomed. There's no turning back anymore. What will happen if I betray him? Many terrible things could happen to me. Well, I have no choice. I must follow the path I've taken. 2 months had passed and our hero was living peacefully, until he received a gift from the Duchess of Altia. And what impressed him was that it was a very expensive wine. They said that a single bottle of that cost thousands of gold coins, and there was even a letter signed with great respect, Altia. Why did she decide to give me this gift? Are you sure this is for me? And the butler said yes. The Duchess herself had asked that it be delivered to him personally, leaving our protagonist shocked. Then he received the information that this girl had become the Duchess and had spent the past 2 months working hard now that she was the head of the family. After her father had died of illness, her brothers would probably have killed her, but they were killed first. Since she was at that ball, she managed to avoid suspicion, and there was also an organization that had been eliminating families involved in underworld activities, so she had a strong alibi. The girl even thought that if she didn't act according to Master Alon's will, she would also be executed. And what frightened her was realizing that he had managed to use all situations in his favor. In her mind, our protagonist was a supervillain, even though he wasn't guilty of any of this. He's many steps ahead of me. He must have helped me because he needed my family to fulfill his own plans. She had spent the last 2 months unifying all the organizations that were under her family's name. The girl imagined that Alon Palacio wanted to build his power through underworld dealings. That was the infamous reputation he was creating, guys, even though our protagonist's true goal was simply to live an easy life. The girl even looked at the portraits of her family's previous generations and thought that she needed to act according to Alon's will to avoid being killed. She even imagined that her new master would contact her soon and hoped that he had liked the wine she had given him so carefully. Carefully nothing, she was scared to death. That's the truth. After delivering the wine to our protagonist, the butler said he would take his leave. So her whole family died and now she's the Duchess. With that, a few more months passed and winter arrived. There were 5 years left until the true beginning of the original story. Someone appeared saying hello to the master. Not master, sorry, Count now. right? Our hero had become the Count of the Palacio family, and that plan of his to live a peaceful life went down the drain. He even had noble privileges, but he had to work hard to maintain the family. Evan had brought a letter from Utia and asked him if he had found any information about his brother's assassins, and Evan said that he hadn't discovered anything yet. The only thing he had found out was that the motivation behind the assassinations might not have been revenge. He just wanted to find out who had done it so he could be prepared. The man in truth was terrified of being killed too, and the mercenary teased our protagonist saying that he was scared. He had received another letter from Utia, which she must have written this time. She had written about her other siblings, praising them. She said that Seal Ring had become obsessed with games. Rian had been reading quite frequently, and the boy realized that he had prevented the children from becoming the deadly sins. Come to think of it, how old are those kids, Evan? Are they about 5 or 6 years old? No, young master, they're already adults. They're over 18 now and ready to enter society. In his mind, those children were still little, but no, guys, they were already grown-ups. He even imagined all of them now older thanking the young master for having freed them from that captivity. He told Evan that it was time to send them into society to find something for them to do. Since our protagonist had played the game many times, he knew what each of them was good at. Utia had talent for faith. Diaz had talent for swordsmanship. Rian had talent for investigation. Seal Ring had talent for combat. And lastly, Raiden, he had talent for apostleship. With that, he decided to send each one to a different place to improve their abilities. Alright, I'll assign each one to specific locations. And when evening came, he had finished writing the letters, and even celebrated, saying that it had been very difficult to choose the proper places. After taking the letters, Evan ran off saying that he would deliver them right away. And so the carrier pigeons flew toward the orphanage. Then Utia said that they had received letters from the master and that now they would see what the next mission of the Blue Lua would be. But unlike before when he wrote only to Utia, this time he had written to all the others. Seal Ring jumped with joy, while Rain held the letter with great care, but Utia was very curious to know what was inside those letters. Seal Ring asked if she could really read a letter from the master, and the girl there said yes and that they should all be ready to read it. It seemed like another informal letter where he talked about random things. Utia said that they probably wouldn't understand, since from the beginning their master had ordered that communication should be disguised. So everyone gathered to try to decipher what the letters meant. Diaz asked if he wrote that way to prevent leaks and she said yes. Exactly because of that. Well, wouldn't it be easier if we just visited him or used a magical communication device? You haven't forgotten, right? We only follow him, nothing more. Her unshakable faith gave everyone chills. Seal Ring said that she would read her letter to try to understand it. And so a moment passed. Diaz commented that he had been sent to a nation to serve as a knight. The cat girl complained because she had been sent to a desert. Raiden had been sent to the City of Pleasure. Rian had been assigned to the City of the Labyrinth. And Utia had been assigned to the Holy Kingdom of Rosario. It was clearly written what each of them should do. They didn't fully understand the reason for all of this, but they managed to grasp the mission. Rian said that the master was amazing because he even mentioned the talents and gifts of each one of them. Utia also said that they should remember very well not to mention the Blue Lua unless someone else did first. Everything we do out of love and devotion must not be exposed, and after they had become adults they left the orphanage to follow their independent journeys. 3 months had passed and our hero had a lot of work. He was studying those spells that required making very embarrassing hand signs. He asked Evan again if he had discovered who had killed his brothers, and the man said not yet. Well, it seems I've altered the story of the game, but I don't know how I did that. It wasn't even supposed to be the Altia family that died, but all of them were eliminated. At that moment, he decided to stop investigating the assassins. They'd been paying a lot of money to the Information Guild, and even so they couldn't discover anything. He made an excuse saying he was spending too much money, but in truth he was afraid of dealing with dangerous people. Besides, those secret organizations were deadly and always acted if you provoked them. That's why our hero preferred not to mess with that kind of person. Evan had an update. Apparently one of the young men who had left the orphanage had become a knight in a famous kingdom. Thus 3 years had passed, and Evan said that the knight Deos had formed his own order of warriors. That meant he was a true prodigy. First he had become a sword user, then he was already an expert in swordsmanship, and lastly he could become a sword master. Some people took over 10 years to form their first knight order, but Deos managed to do it in less than a year. Thus another 6 months passed. It had now been a full year since the 5 deadly sins had become independent. Evan said that Deos had become the 5th sword of Caliburn, which was the name of the kingdom. That meant he had become a master knight. And our hero was completely astonished. Seriously, he became a sword master? Encyclopedia, a sword master. He was a superhuman who surpassed even the Aura Blade. You could already tell the guy was insanely strong. Evan even said that he had achieved it in a truly astonishing way. He must have even broken a record. He had managed to defeat the 4th sword in a duel. The mercenary passed some more information to our protagonist, and he began reflecting on it. It usually took about 15 years to control Aura. and some people took more than 3 decades, but Deus had done it in only 1 year. Rianhar was the current swordmaster, and he had reached that position at the age of 32, which had been a record at the time. Our protagonist remembered that man, and he truly was a very powerful character. Even so, it had taken him 32 years of his life to achieve that rank, but Deus had done it much younger. And our boy was all pleased, imagining that it was thanks to him. He even thought he could gain some benefit from it and kept looking at the letter. I even wonder what will happen to our protagonist when he finds out that these people have formed a cult because of him. While holding the letter, he said it was a shame he only sent letters to Utia, so he missed the chance to take advantage of Deus. Even after going to that holy kingdom, Deus continued sending letters to Utia. Well, even though Deus has never met me in person, he could at least thank me for this gift I gave him. But then he changed his mind and slapped his own face, thinking he should be grateful that the 5 sins hadn't destroyed the whole world. As long as the children lived and ate well, that was enough, since in the game's original story he would have died to Deus. The scene then moved to the capital of Caliburn, which was the city where Deus lived. That was the great estate where the Order of the Eclipse Knights resided. We saw Deus at the top of a castle, looking out the window. He had become the commander of the Order of the Eclipse Knights. A girl appeared below. It was his little sister waving at him. The boy returned the gesture to her and said that even after a year he still felt embarrassed about how he used to think. After losing everything and being consumed by the darkness of his thoughts, he had come to believe it would be better to lose his life. His sister had been taken from him, and his parents had died. He truly thought the Black Beast had taken his sister away and devoured her. After that, he ended up being captured and tortured, and the only thing left as a memory was that pendant from his sister. But then he was freed by the Blue Lua, who was our protagonist, and joined a sect founded by Utia. He carried out several missions in the name of the Blue Lua, even though he had never met the man in person. He even wondered if he was doing the right thing by following that sect so blindly. For years he carried out those missions without even questioning them. And then he received that letter ordering him to go to the city of Caliburn to become a knight. He wasn't excited at all, having lost both his sister and his parents. However, when he arrived there, he was extremely surprised. That was because his little sister was alive and in that city. It was at that moment that he reached out his hands and realized it was all thanks to the Blue Lua. Deus hugged his sister tightly, shocked that she was alive. She was the only family he had left. Hugging his little sister, he broke down in tears. All this time he had believed she was dead. "Hey Kylie, after we were separated, what happened to you?" He even wiped her tears as she cried from happiness. After that, they sat down and she told the whole story. After she was separated from her brother, she had been dragged away by that evil being and trapped in darkness for many days. And when she was about to be killed, something appeared to save her. She could hardly believe it was real, but it was a flash of light rescuing her from that place. She was about to be sold and enslaved, but a man with an eye patch appeared there to save her, and that flash of light was him. After that, they took her to a safe place and gave her medicine. The person who had rescued her was named Alon Palladio, and that was our hero. When she told her brother that this was the person who had saved her, Deus was completely shocked. So Alon used his own name to protect you, so that no one would try to kidnap you again. He had never told anyone about his family, not even Utia, that it had been the Black Beast who kidnapped him and his sister. In the end, Utia was right. The Blue Lua knew everything. The man was in shock because all this time he had questioned whether he should follow the Blue Lua so blindly. Now finally the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. At first he hadn't understood the anxiety that Utia felt. It seemed she acted foolishly, trying to please the Blue Lua no matter what. But then good things began to happen along his path, and he even remembered Rian's words to him about the Blue Lua. During all this time, the Blue Lua had been watching over him, and for that the boy owed him everything. His sister asked if he was all right, and the boy gently patted her head. For you to understand, Deus was only thinking about his revenge. He wanted to defeat that Black Beast that had kidnapped him and his sister, and he imagined that our hero had known about it all along. Because of that, he believed he wasn't good enough to be part of that sect. But the gift that our hero had given him was something unimaginable. He had his little sister back, and it was the best gift he could ever receive. He even remembered the moment when Utia said that one day he would also understand why she was so devoted. He took the letter that Alon had given him years ago, telling him to become a knight. And with a serious expression, he said that he would repay everything that the Blue Lua had done for him. That would be his life's mission. Therefore, he decided to form that order of knights. Then the scene returned to the present, and he was receiving a visit from a soldier. He would begin a new expedition and become the support point for the solar eclipse. For you to have an idea, he believed that the will of our protagonist had dominated the entire world, which was why he was appointed to become a general of knights. He even said that he would handle all problems while grabbing his sword. I only await the day when I can express my gratitude along with a reward that will satisfy him. Thus, the Order of the Solar Eclipse Knights departed on an expedition to fight against the barbarians. Our protagonist, unaware of everything, was calmly reading a book. At that moment a piece of paper flew away and he picked up those letters, wondering why the wind had gotten so strong. Let's see. Let me make some notes. After returning from the labyrinth, he conducted some research to improve his magical arts. And after learning those magical incantations, he wrote everything down in a small notebook. With that, he was ready to test some spells. He had already trained a lot during all that time. He had managed to perform a spell called Repulsion, and another one called Azure Light, which was the same magic that granted critical attacks and allowed him to defeat even stone golems. Scratching his head, he said that he had made good progress, but it was still a bit confusing to use chants and hand seals. Those spells were so ancient that they didn't even appear in historical books. Thus he went outside and began conducting some experiments. He prepared a hand seal and bolts of lightning began to form around his body. He needed to properly direct those lightning bolts so they wouldn't scatter. Next he used another fixation spell, then all those lightning bolts began forming a core. Immediately after he used Collapse, which caused the lightning to change color. He extended his hands and formed new symbols. Then the massive lightning bolt fell from the sky to the place where he stood. So the order of the phrases also mattered. When I started with Collapse using that first phrase, the spell failed, it didn't work. At that moment something caught his attention. It was two people who had been watching the entire scene. The redhead asked if the magic he had used was the spell known as Origin. My god, Zenonia is here and she saw me using that spell. A mage standing behind her as a guard kept saying that it surely was a unique spell called Origin. Oh no. They're going to realize that I'm actually strong. Later, the two of them went to the reception room. They waited for our protagonist. There were two reasons why she had come to his house. The first was to confirm the intentions of Count Palladio. She was terrified of our protagonist. That's why she came there. She already suspected that he possessed a super powerful secret organization and wanted to know his purpose with it. But what she ended up witnessing was something terrifying. Even that 5th level mage named Biano was terrified of our hero. Well, if someone like him was that shocked, that boy from the Palladio family must really be powerful. That was the spell called Origin, a spell extremely rare and legendary. At that moment, our protagonist opened the door and asked, "What brought you two to my estate?" I apologize for my sudden visit and also for my lack of manners. The redhead said that she had been wandering around the region and decided to stop by his house. But the boy said that Lady Zenonia didn't need to explain herself and that he wanted to make one thing very clear. That spell he used was an Origin, and if he had to classify that spell, he would say it was around the 2nd level. Besides, that spell he had used had no real effect. He said that so they wouldn't spread rumors about him being powerful, but they ended up taking it as a threat. Yes, Master Palladio. I must have been mistaken. Phew, I'm glad you understood. I hope no misunderstandings happen after you leave here. The woman was trembling in fear and even said she was very sorry for having come there to disturb him. The boy said that since they hadn't come for anything important, he would take his leave and not waste any more time. The woman thanked him for having spared even a few moments to exchange words with her. Well, Zenonia, if you ever need someone to talk to, I can recommend a person to you. You can visit the Duchess of Altia and exchange some good words with her. He even said that the two of them would get along very well, and the girl found that very suspicious. They were rival families, but the girl politely thanked him because she was terrified. At that moment there wasn't even a signal of Wi-Fi. Thus Lady Zenonia left in her luxurious carriage. Evan appeared and asked why such a famous family had come to speak with him, and our hero said he had no idea. He thought that if people discovered he was powerful, the Blue Lewis sect would come after him to kill him. No, my boy, those people idolize you. It's quite the opposite. Evan asked if by any chance our protagonist knew he was in danger, and he said yes. And with a discouraged expression he said they should never investigate that organization again. Inside the carriage they were talking about the magic they had witnessed. The redhead asked that Master Mage if that magic was truly the Origin, and he said no, that it wasn't the Origin. It was much worse than the Origin. It was a far more powerful magic. He had used a spell on his left eye to analyze that incantation, and it was as if Master Alon Palladio had shattered an entire magical dimension. He kept shouting, saying that it had broken the laws of physics. It wasn't a simple Origin spell which itself was already legendary. And as he spoke about how unbelievable that magic was, the redhead trembled in fear, and the worst of all according to the old man, was that his magic contained a malevolent being. Behind the boy there had been a dark eye, as if it were a demonic curse. That was clearly the power of a great forgotten god, and he scratched his head saying he had never seen anything like it. Those forgotten spells from a distant era were extremely dangerous, and ordinary mages couldn't handle them. The redhead laughed nervously, saying that if Alon's intent had been to intimidate her, he had succeeded. Imagining that he was a supreme being moving all the pieces of the game, she even said it would be good to visit the Duchess of Altia and form some kind of alliance with her. With a pale face and cold sweat, she lamented saying she had already become a pawn of Alon Palladio. 5 months had passed and it had already been 2 years since the children began living independently. Our hero ended up calling for Evan and asked if there was any relevant information about the children. And Evan said no. The only relevant news was that the Duchess of Zenonia and the Duchess of Altia had formed an alliance. My god, did she really take what I said that day so seriously? He had told the redhead from the Zenonia family to talk with the girl from the Altia family, and it seemed she had taken it far too seriously. And he even grew worried, realizing he was intimidating people without meaning to. I hope that alliance of hers is temporary, because they're basically the most powerful families in the underworld. Trying to clear up the misunderstanding, he took a pencil and a piece of paper and wrote a letter to CIA, that redhead, saying there had been a misunderstanding, and that he didn't mean to be rude. After finishing it, he told his mercenary to take it quickly to the Zenonia family. Then he grabbed some letters and wondered what was happening with the children and why they weren't sending him any updates. Could Seolrang have died alone in that dry and scorching desert? Because of that, he decided to send them gifts and letters as well. For Seolrang, he had managed to send her an essence from the Juba tribe, which was basically that handguard. It was one of the items he had managed to acquire, and he said it might work well for her. It would be good for her to use that item because it granted strength, and the place where he had sent Seolrang was exactly a land of warriors, conquered through power. The scene shifted to the place where Seolrang was living. The girl was in a dark dungeon and celebrated, saying she had finally defeated all her enemies and even thanked the Lua for the gift, which was that very same bracelet he had sent her. That's not even called a bracelet, guys. I don't even know what to call it. A gauntlet, maybe. She thought that the essence of the Juba tribe, that gauntlet, was only a legendary item mentioned in myths. But no, that item belonged to a story she had heard since childhood. Her parents had told her about that legendary relic, which belonged to their family, the Lupina tribe, descendants of the Beast Kings. The little girl had always loved listening to those stories of legendary beings. And that item was extremely mythical, passed down from generation to generation. But that item had been lost for many years until our hero managed to recover it and gifted it to her. As soon as she put it on, she felt a strange resonance. It seemed as if that item had been made exactly for her. And the girl thanked him, saying that the Blue Lua truly knew a lot about her. Our hero had no idea about any of this, and ended up giving her an item that had belonged to her family for generations. The Blue Lua was the benefactor who had saved her from slavery, and she even believed that he was helping her take revenge on the Black Dragon. Therefore, she should repay everything he had done for her. And so she began to emanate her power, saying that she would conquer that entire region. She would do it in the name of the Blue Lua, Alon Palacio. With a determined gaze, she said that first she would become the strongest warrior of the desert. She would gather her scattered tribe and thus restore her lineage. And finally, she would kill the Black Dragon, the one who had kidnapped her and destroyed her family. After that, she left that dungeon and looked toward a blue moon, saying that everything she would do was thanks to Alon Palacio. She said that she owed her life and honor to him. The more our hero tried to live a peaceful life, the more trouble he brought upon himself. The scene returned to our hero, who was reading some documents. Evan said he had gathered some rumors about the children he had sent to live independently. Rumors said that Seolrang was doing very well in the colony, and had even earned the nickname Golden Lightning. The boy asked about Redan, what had happened to him. Evan said he had been busy and hadn't managed to obtain that information. And our hero looked at him with an annoyed expression. He wanted to know all of this as soon as possible before leaving for the Magic Tower. And Evan became alarmed. What do you mean we're going to the Magic Tower? He wanted to go there to research a few things and mentioned that it was close to the city of the Labyrinth. All right, master, then I'll prepare immediately. Just thinking about those long horseback trips already made him feel tired, but he needed to go there to study his mana core, since he didn't have much energy. Guys, that labyrinth he had mentioned was a map in Psychodia where the deeper you went, the better the items you found. The place was so deep that no one had ever managed to reach the end. Just like in the game Endless Labyrinth, it continuously generated relics and artifacts almost infinitely. Rian had become an appraiser of magical items and she was very skilled at it. He even thought that he could take a few items to her for analysis. The scene showed the city of the Labyrinth. It was a city full of adventurers and also had numerous shops selling extremely rare items, including those mechatref devices. There was a shop called Murd, and what a strange name for a store, huh, guys? But that shop had silently grown to become one of the main ones. Among its patrons was the Lord of Lartania, and Rian went there to sell a few items, saying that one of them generated mana flames. And the most interesting thing was that there was an engraved seal on that relic that made it even more powerful. The merchant asked Rian what was special about that seal, and she said that with very little mana, one could already activate the artifact. Thus, the man ended up buying the item, saying he was always grateful for her bringing the best products. Later, she took off her mask and we saw that she had grown quite a lot over all that time. Looking to the side, she noticed another item, and after picking it up, she said that this one could also be engraved. The reason that shop became both obscure and famous was because of those magical seal engravings. She had received a mythical item from the Blue Lua, our protagonist. She was delighted because he had told her to become an appraiser, and at first she didn't quite understand why. She knew that our hero possessed the powers of that pal of the legendary mage. That's why she came to believe more and more that our protagonist was a mythical being. And when she received the mission to become an appraiser in the city of the labyrinth, she thought it was strange. What does being an appraiser have to do with fighting beings of darkness? I don't understand why he wants me to follow this profession. But then she realized she had a gift. Our hero had sent her the Tracker's Eye as a gift, an extremely legendary item capable of marking objects. The item was so unique that there was no other like it. When touched, it began to release its chains and revealed itself as a beautiful artifact. As soon as she lifted the seals, the engraving was unlocked, and to awaken even more powers to defeat the beings of darkness, she had to fully awaken that item. Once she reached her 500th marked item, she would unlock that magical artifact, and she was already at 248. So she marked the item she was holding. That brought the total to 252 sacrifices required to complete the item. Because of her power, she could use that artifact, and it had been sent by our protagonist. Thus she believed that Alon Palladio's wish was for her to unlock that ultimate power to take revenge on the evil being who had kidnapped her. And hugging that item, she said that all of this was thanks to the Lua, born with that power called the Library of Eternity, which allowed her to use it. Everything is according to the will of the great Lua. He truly wants me to kill the Black Wolf. The scene moves to the Magic Tower. Upon arriving there, a Vice Master Mage told our hero to say quickly what he wanted and then leave. She even said that she was far too busy to deal with someone like him. The man knew that she was only treating him poorly because she could sense that he had little mana. The Magic Tower not only possessed overwhelming combat capacity, but also held a monopoly over certain supplies. He knew that the Vice Master had great authority, so he introduced himself as Count Palladio and said that he had come to resolve the issue of the Gate of Time, but the woman continued fiddling with her items, showing little interest in him. Then he said that he could eliminate the Gate of Time. This Gate of Time was a rift that appeared inside the Magic Tower, from which numerous demons would emerge. She used her power of analysis and realized that he was quite weak. So she told him to leave and even mocked him, saying that he was nothing but a weakling. After he insisted that he would close the Gate of Time, she became irritated and slammed her hand on the table, shouting that many people like him came there every day. She even said she knew that he only wanted to try to close that Gate of Time to improve the public opinion people had of his disgusting family. In an attempt to intimidate our hero, she began to release her power, telling him to leave the Magic Tower. The boy was truly frightened because she was one of the most powerful characters in the game, and when she began unleashing her power, he grew even more afraid. Even Evan said that it might not be wise to push their luck by provoking that woman. Then he said that if by any chance he couldn't close the Gate of Time, he would give all his fortune to her. Well, if that's necessary, I'll even make an oath. The woman found him somewhat interesting, so she decided to take our protagonist to the Gate of Time to see if he could really close it. She had assumed he was just an heir, spoiled noble, but no, he seemed to have some determination. However, since that Gate of Time was extremely difficult to seal, she knew he wouldn't be able to do it. If he fails to close the Gate of Time, all his wealth will belong to me. They jumped into the portal, and he even tossed a box of items aside. That rift in the tower had been open for over 2 years and was causing real problems for all the mages. While he performed the hand seals, the woman stood back, saying that he wouldn't succeed and didn't even need to try. Wait a second, he's using his hand as a catalyst instead of a staff. Could he be planning to use ancient magic? Hey boy, stop showing off and get out of there right now. At that moment the air grew heavy and she realized she could no longer move her body. Wait, did he stop time? Is he using some kind of forbidden magic?